Hello everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Campfire. I know it's your favorite time to gather around the campfire with me and Steven. Did you get taller and wider?
Well, you see, I happened to changed a little bit the last time I've been here. Last time I was in Atlanta, let's just say I kind of got kidnapped and some experiments were taken upon me, and let's just say it didn't go too well. I can say now, instead of being 5'4", I'm 6'5". So that's a pretty big improvement.
That's a good improvement. Today we got a good old story, and as you said, Steven is 5'4", guys, or he used to be. So this is our St. Patrick's Week episode, where we will be covering not Steven's cousin, the leprechaun. Okay, you guys probably pulled onto our prank by now and realized that if you heard his voice or if you're watching on YouTube, this is not Steven. This is Paul, our video and editor guy.
Hello, my name is Paul, and I'm the guy that puts pictures in. Nothing else more. But I'm filling in for Steven because somebody lives in Atlanta, not in Statesboro, so part of it.
Well, also he has some family problems going on, so he's taking a little hiatus. So we pulled Paul out of our basement dungeon and brought him to the light to work on the other side of the camera.
Overtime. So that's what we get for those 40-hour weeks of sitting in front of the microphone and watching the campfire.
Yeah, so as you guys know, if you want to complain about our YouTube videos not going out as quick, here's the face and the name, so you know who to go bitch to, okay? Not to me, not to Steven, to Paul.
No comment.
Paul has a real life, unlike me and Steven. He's got bitches, he's got hoes, and he's got to take care of them. And he cannot spend the whole time with me and Steven or editing a video for me and Steven. So we cannot keep him in the basement forever. Sometimes the bird has to fly a little free for a little bit. And again, like I said, this is not a full-time gig, so the videos are going to take a little bit of time to get out on YouTube. However, if you listen to us on Spotify, Castbox, Amazon, Pandora, iHeartRadio, you get the episodes every Friday at 5 p.m. But if you want to watch the YouTube version, you're probably going to be waiting about 3 weeks. It's like Amazon.
Just give it every time a month. Each month, new video, half the quality, but better the audio. And visual. Minus audio.
Who doesn't like looking at me and Steven all day? I mean, you guys probably just prefer listening to us and then rather than looking at us and watching us be silly or stupid or just staring into each other's eyes.
So the difference between this episode and the past episodes is that if you're watching on YouTube, the I guess you could say colors blending a lot, more. So we kind of, I don't know, the light just shines on our face a lot more than Steven does, I guess you could say. But that's not saying Steven doesn't shine. Much we can do, but the best we can do is talk about the next topic.
Yes, so moving past that wonderful intro of us goofing and goofing off there, as we stated, Steven is obviously not here right now. He's on hiatus because of his grandfather or something happened, and he needed to stay in Atlanta for when we were going to film this episode. And of course, that's just because, like I said, we don't film this full-time. We're not full-timers just yet. Once we are full-time, I'm going to crawl his ass about it. No, I'm just kidding. He can go spend time with Granddad if he needs to. But it's going to be a little bit difficult for us to film episodes just because, like Paul said, Steven lives in Atlanta, and I live far away from Atlanta, near Savannah. And so it's hard for Steven to get down here and film with me. So those days when Steven's not here, luckily Paul lives right up the road, so I can just knock on his door, drag him out, away from his hose, and say, come film.
at 1 in the morning.
Yeah, this is the latest we've ever filmed an episode, and let me tell you, I am cracked out on ADHD energy right now. Paul is dying because he got up at 6 a.m.
Well, you know what? We're making it because all I need is a little bit of water, and my gosh, that's when the ADHD kicks in.
Are you ADHD as well?
Indeed.
This episode is fixing to be like cracked out everywhere. Buckle up, folks, because today is our St. Patrick's Day episode. Today, we are talking about. Do you have a clue?
Why don't you tell the viewers what we have in store?
Today is the episode about the Banshee, a cryptid of Irish folklore, which is our first cryptid across the pond. Okay, not our last, but our first. We're going to be covering, of course, like I said, the Banshee. Do you know what a Banshee is, Paul?
I do not. Why don't you enlighten us into this classified information?
Well, the Banshee is truly probably one of the most terrifying cryptids we could end up covering on this podcast. I would put it in my top five. I mean, like a Wendigo and a Skinwalker are pretty spooky, but the Banshee's like right up there at number 3.
Well, if you know Will, and he's saying it's top 5, we're about to get some really deep stuff.
Yeah, put on your diapers because you're fixing to piss yourself because you're going to be so scared. Okay, so yes, this is going to be probably one of the most terrifying cryptids we could end up covering on this podcast, especially when you take into account why the Banshee is seen. They call the Banshee a fairy of the mound, or a female spirit.
So is this a fairy or a woman or both? What's going on here? I thought you said it's supposed to be a terrifying creature.
So the fairy of the mound kind of comes from the folklore that when, kind of like, Indians have burial mounds. The Egyptians built pyramids. The Irish had these gigantic mounds where they would bury their kings and their rulers. And so the name Fairy of the Mound kind of comes from her haunting the mound where these kings are buried. And so that's kind of where that name comes from. Now, when people see the Banshee, there's usually a scream that they will hear. And this is to kind of warn people that a family member or a loved one is going to die.
Oh, that's a lot to take in. Question is, what type of family member, or is it just random?
I mean, it's anyone that you care for, you love for, or as there'll be a story we'll hear later on, it could also be someone that loves you and, is trying to give you a warning that they're dying.
Well, here's the big question. What's scream and tell? Are we talking, a little baby squeak or a lion or something else?
Have you ever, when we, as you guys know, we're on the farm right now filming this. Whenever we've been on the farm, has Maddie ever done the scream whenever we've done manhunt and I was like, hey,
I believe I've heard it. It's you have to hear it for yourself.
So imagine the most blood-curdling scream coming from a woman, like a woman just giving the most blood-curdling cry out. And that is what the Banshee sounds like. Now, there is a story behind what her scream means. And a lot of people say that the scream heard before is the family member's soul leaving their body.
Well, that's saying a lot. I guess he's targeting women, I guess? If it's a woman's scream, what's going on? Unless the guys must have got a little scared off their pants from the Banshee. I mean, you never know what's going on.
So the whole idea behind the Banshee and her scream is you will see this woman, and you'll kind of see her, and she'll just let out this blood-curdling scream. And usually when you see her, it means that a family member, man, woman, granddad, grandma, great-uncle, great-aunt, cousin, brother, sister, has just died. And that when you hear that Banshee scream, she's not actually screaming. She is basically embodying the sound of your soul leaving your body to go on to the next life.
Well, you hear that, folks? Make sure you watch what you see and be aware of your surroundings.
So this is the bad Banshee, okay? And there's a quick little quick insert of info. There is a good Banshee. She's usually seen at like when you go on to bury a family member. She can sometimes be seen, and she'll be playing a mournful song to lift up the spirits of those who have just lost a loved one. But we aren't going to be talking about her. We're going to be talking about her evil sister.
Oh, I was getting excited about the good Banshee. I don't know. I was kind of ready to hear some, high magical gospel tunes. But you know what? When we go into the real stuff, you know what we're going to talk about. Might not be the good, most likely going to be the bad. But we're going to get a little of both. And we got some visual depictions that will talk to us about.
Yes, I'm going to be now describing to you what the Banshee looks like. In some cases, she appears as an older woman with long white hair and red cheeks. At other times, she appears as a young woman with long black hair, blue eyes, and pale skin. So, I'm going to kind of tell you like a little visual summary, and like you're probably sitting there like, okay, old woman, like got like white hair, red cheeks. Okay, what? Like the evil queen from Snow White.
I do.
Okay, so imagine that. That's what they say the old version of the Banshee could look like.
Well, if you ever seen Snow White's a little scary sight, even as a kid. So imagine seeing it in live action. I don't know. It's not something you want to come across on, especially in the woods.
Yeah, well, now get ready for the younger version. As I just said, sometimes she compares the young woman, long black hair, blue eyes, pale skin.
That's just my type.
And the way that I picture this is, the girl from The Ring?
I do not, but you know what? I don't know if everybody has seen a ring, so give us some examples.
So the movie The Ring is that movie where they say if you watch this film, you die in 7 days, right? Yeah. You're picking up what I'm stepping in.
I do.
So imagine, her. She has the long black hair and she comes crawling out of the well, like freaky deaky, right?
That's not my type.
Well, that's what I am kind of imagining the other version to look like. And future Paul is going to pop up these pictures to kind of show you what she looks like. So I'm going to slide these pictures across to Paul. The first picture, what are you doing there, Paul? No, I'm going to give you this picture. That picture. All right, look at that. Wow, Paul is getting crazy with this. Tell me what you think, Paul. That's the old woman.
So right now I'm looking at the old woman, and well, it's exactly like, imagine Emperor Palpatine and the Snow White Queen combined into one. It's a sight to see. It's very visual description that only one can imagine what it could look like from a distance.
Yeah, so imagine seeing that, like, out in the middle of a graveyard or something, and it just, like, lets out the most blood-curdling scream you've ever heard.
But you know what? We'll just have to man up and run away.
Alright, now this next one you might get a little aroused.
I'm just a little scared now. Oh no.
Ain't she pretty, folks?
Yeah, what I'm looking at now is honestly even more terrifying than the other one. I'd rather hang out with the old lady than this person.
You're telling me you wouldn't tap that?
No.
Do you think Steven would tap that?
Only one way to find out. Stay tuned for episode 5, which is right now. Next week.
Yeah, next week. And we'll find out what Steven has to say. Anyways, so sometimes you can see this woman, and she'll be like combing her hair. She'll have a comb, and she'll be combing her hair. And I don't understand why she comes after you. I didn't really do much digging on that part. But some accounts claim that she chases after you and she'll come after you, follow you. And the best way to keep her off of you is to throw a comb. Because she'll see the comb and then she'll want to comb her hair. This kind of reminds me of, have you ever seen the movie The Leprechaun?
I have.
So, like how he always, he sees messy shoes and he's always got, shine them and they can get away from him?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, but the Banshee likes combs. So she's got, a hair fetish going on.
Well, we just got to make sure that everybody has a purse or a man purse or whatever you call it, book bag if needed. At least one comb in there in case you encounter one of these creatures. For your hair and for this.
Dude, you already know I'm gonna be rocking a fanny pack here shortly, like with a bunch of like little mini like mustache combs.
Hey, they didn't say what type of cone it needs to be. As long as it looks like a cone, it can be used as a comb, then I think we'll be alright.
Well, if you use anything like Ariel, you could just throw out a freaking fork.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you even use a spoon if you want to. We're getting pretty. Hey, even this cup I'm holding right now. Yeah, I mean, it might not exactly do much with the hair, but we'll make an oval shape. So, hey, it was gonna rock and roll.
I think we're digging a little too deep there with the whole comb talk.
Hey, we're just being a little careful.
Hey, better to be prepared than not prepared at all, and then your dad just got his soul sucked by a soul-sucking bitch named a Banshee.
That's right. Just be aware. Watch out.
Well, watch out there, folks. Anyways, so I did find a website called Free Short Horror Stories. It contains some stories of the Banshee. So you kind of heard what she looks like. You saw what she looked like. You gave her a rate of 1 to 10, whether you smash or not. As you know, we used to play as high school. Did we play that in high school? When did that smash or pass thing come out?
Well, you and me are very different age-wise, so it might have been middle school for me and high school for you. So I don't know.
So the most famous Banshee of ancient times. So we're going to get into some accounts, some eyewitness statements from some people who have claimed to have seen the Banshee, and kind of go over those stories. The most famous Banshee of ancient times was that attached to the kingly house of O'Brien, Abehill, who haunted the rock of Cragley above Killaloe near the old palace of Kincora. In A.D. 1014 was fought the Battle of Clontarf, from which the aged king, Brian Boru, knew that he would never come away alive from the previous night. Would never come away alive. For the previous night, Abehill had appeared to him to tell him of his impending fate. The Banshee's method of foretelling death in olden times differed from that adopted by her at the present day. Now she wails and wrings her hand as a general rule. But in the old Irish tales, she is to be found washing human heads and limbs, or blood-stained clothes, till the water is all dyed with human blood. This would take place before a battle. So it would seem that in the course of centuries, her attributes and characteristics have changed somewhat.
All because of Brian.
Yeah, so this first story talks about O'Brien, Brian Boru, who kind of got a visit from his buddy Abehill, and it kind of reminds me of the story of Macbeth, to where the ghost kind of comes to tell him he's going to die. I'm pretty sure that happened in Macbeth. I think that happened in Macbeth. But she kind of just, I like the older version of her. She went through this new emo phase, and I don't like it, man. She's screaming at people. Like, come on, take a chill pill. So back in the olden days, she would just kind of before a big fight, you would see her, she'd be sitting there, she'd be washing some clothes, maybe some, decapitated heads or something. And it would be kind of a warning that death was to come in a fight, in a battle to come. So if you're on the battlefield, they got them camps around battlefields. I kind of imagine at this camp, these soldiers are walking, and one of them might catch a glimpse, and they see her just sitting there wringing out some bloodied clothes, and they're like, crap, I'm going to die in battle tomorrow,
Mm-hmm. Well, personally, if I were to hear a scream out in the wilderness and know that my family member's dying, of course that's going to upset me. But if I hear, if I see in the distance some, lady just messing around, doing whatever, and I know I'm going to go into battle tomorrow and die, personally, I think that's kind of epic. Because imagine going into battle like, this is my last chance, all in. But, and of course you got to die, but battle is a lot more fun than, screaming and having your soul sucked, so.
Yeah, and I don't know if she actually sucks her soul. I just kind of like to think she does. But, I like to think of it like if you're sitting there and you see her wringing out the clothes and you're like, okay, I'm going to die in battle tomorrow. Might as well call in sick. Does that mean that either way you're going to die tomorrow? Or, can you avoid it by, calling in sick? Or like, are you gonna go home and they're gonna be like moving some piano in the apartment above you and it's gonna like drop and squish?
Well, it depends if the piano dropping is a battle of its own. Now, if it's you versus the piano, I mean, that's just kind of sad, man. That's kind of a bad way to go. Or you can postpone. Imagine you say, you know what, I'm going to take a 2-week vacation and then I'm going to battle. Or I'll battle when I'm 60. But actually, I'm going to postpone until I find the best battle I can find. And that way, I'll go out pretty good.
I just think either way she's gonna get you, man. Like, if she's got her eyes set on you and she goes, I'm gonna get that guy, she's gonna get that guy. You know?
Well, it's like death and Puss in Boots. You know, it's going to get you no matter what.
That's like a girl at a bar, you know? Or like the creepy guy at the bar, like always trying to hit on you and you're like, get away from me, dude! And then he won't go away. The Banshee is the creepy guy at the bar.
He just keeps on coming. There's no way out. It's kind of scary.
I'm not giving you my phone number, damn it!
It's like Steven at the bar. He was that guy with the blonde from Blue.
That's an inside joke. Don't worry, Steven has not gone to a bar. Ritu, if you're watching this, I have not taken to a bar, okay? This is joke. Ritu is Steven's mom. Shout out to Ritu.
Please don't take our words out of context.
Anyways, I got another story for you, which also comes from the Free Short Horror Stories website. Really cool website. Got a lot of interesting stuff on there. This one takes place a little closer to our time. The other one was a little of an ancient story. This one takes place, I think they said 1776 is where it's referenced in here. So, my maternal grandmother heard the following tradition from her mother, one of the Miss Ross Lewins, who witnessed the occurrence. Their father, Mr. Harrison Ross Lewin, was away in Dublin on law business, and in his absence, the young people went off to spend the evening with a friend who lived some miles away. The night was fine and lightsome as they were returning, save at one point where the road ran between trees or high hedges not far to the west of the old church of Kilchrist. The latter, like many similar ruins, was a simple, oblong building with long side walls and high gables, and at that time it and its graveyard were unenclosed and lay in the open fields. As the party passed down the long dark lane, they suddenly heard in the distance loud keening and clapping of hands, as the country people were accustomed to do when laminating the dead. Keening is kind of like a old Irish funeral chant. The Ross Lewins hurried on, and it came in sight of the church, on the side wall of which a little gray-haired old woman, clad in a dark cloak, was running to and fro, chanting and wailing and throwing up her arms. The girls were very frightened, but the young men ran forward and surrounded the ruin, and the two of them went into the church, the apparition vanishing from the walls. They did so. They searched every nook, and found no one, nor did anyone pass out. All were now well scared and got home as fast as possible. On reaching their home, their mother opened the door and at once told them that she was in terror about their father. For as she sat looking out the window in the moonlight, a huge raven with fiery eyes lit on the sill and tapped 3 times on the glass. 3 times is kind of like it's like either like a warning or a spirit like knocking. They told her their story, which only added to their anxiety. And as they stood talking, taps came to the nearest window and they saw the bird again. A few days later, news reached them that Mr. Ross Lewins had died suddenly in Dublin. This occurred about 1776.
So you think this bird, the raven that was kind of coming out and knocking on the door, was that just a limited time thing, or what's your take into it?
Well, I think I think them seeing the old, like, again, they were obviously terrified because if you grew up in Ireland, you've always heard this kind of story about this banshee, and you see what you think is one. I think seeing the banshee, hearing her scream, was obviously a warning of their father's death to come. And I think as well, the raven tapping on the glass 3 times, it was all a warning, I guess in a way to kind of say, hey, is that the wind? That's freaky, man. Anyways, as a warning that your dad is going to die soon. And I think what just adds to the horror is they're like, man, our dad's going to die. We saw a banshee, we see this raven, we hear the 3 taps, it's all a warning. And then they soon receive news that Dad is dead. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad times for them back in 1776. Back when, America was just starting. Imagine just having your dad die by a raven.
I don't think the raven killed him. It could have been like a heart attack. But I think in America just started, but luckily they're in Dublin, so they ain't got to worry about the Revolutionary War. So I've got our second to last story. And this is another one that also comes from that website I told you about. And it says, one of the oldest and best known Banshee stories is that related in the memoirs of Lady Fanshawe. In 1642, her husband, Sir Richard, and she chanced to visit a friend, the head of an Irish sept, who resided in his ancient burial castle surrounded with a moat. At midnight, she was awakened by a ghastly and supernatural scream, and looking out of bed, beheld in the moonlight a female face and part of the form hovering at the window. The distance from the ground, as well as the circumstance of the moat, excluded the possibility that what she beheld was of this world. The face was that of a young and rather handsome woman, but pale, and the hair, which was reddish, was loose and disheveled. The dress, which Lady Fanshawe terror did not prevent her remarking accurately, was that of the ancient Irish. This apparition continued to exhibit itself for some time, and then vanished with two shrieks similar to that which had first excited Lady Fanshawe's attention. In the morning, with infinite terror, she communicated to her host what she had witnessed, and found him prepared not only to credit but to account for the superstition. A near relation of my family, said he, expired last night in this castle. We disguised our certain expectations of the event from you, lest it should throw a cloud over the cheerful reception which was your due. Now, before such an event happens in this family or castle, the female spectre whom you have seen is always visible. She is believed to be the spirit of a woman of inferior rank, whom one of my ancestors degraded himself by marrying, and whom afterwards, to expiate the dishonor done to his family, he caused to be drowned in the moat. In strictness, this woman could hardly be termed a banshee. The motive for the haunting is akin to that in a tale of the Scotch drummer of Hortaki, where the spirit of the murdered man haunts the family out of revenge and appears before death. So, this story it could be considered a Banshee story, it cannot be considered a Banshee story. And it, like I was talking about Macbeth, it kind of reminds me a little bit of that, just because of the fact, like, it appears, I think in Macbeth, there's, like, the ghost that appeared to Macbeth all the time of, I think, someone he murdered. So in a way, it's kind of like that story, to where if you go off the Banshee idea, this could be a Banshee, where it's like she appears, blah blah blah. But if you go off the whole drummer story, it's a different type of cryptid, which we might cover on the podcast if I can find enough stories about it, to where it's basically just someone who got and came back to haunt and exact revenge, and every time someone's going to die, there they are screaming. So it's kind of like your own personal Banshee.
Well, that's kind of awesome to have a personal banshee. I mean, don't get that much often. Imagine, banshees are always roaming around, kind of looking for random people. But if you got one on you, that's like a rivalry. It could, it's like the back in the old days when the banshees were just kind of, setting out, and you had to die in battle. Imagine dying in battle against a banshee. That's pretty cool.
I could just imagine, like, you standing out there, you're arguing with your neighbor. Hey man, look at me, I've got my own personal Banshee. What do you got, a car? Ha! I've got a Banshee!
I mean, who can match up against a car and a Banshee?
Wait a second, what happened? Ah, we went offline, Paul. I don't think it's recording anymore.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Hey, we got the camera.
Well, hold up, it's still going. I think we're still recording, we're fine.
Oh.
I'll double check. Worst case, you're coming over tomorrow because you ain't got class. Anyways. College kids. Anyways. I think we're still recording. Don't worry. I just realized I had my mic off this whole time. So they heard me. They didn't. Anyways. So the last story I have for you before we see it still says there, it says stop, not start.
Technical
So
issues, the Beyond the Campfire, because the campfire got a little too close, so the heat's kind of messing up with our system. So just kind of have to watch
we're
out.
melting things. Anyways,
Yeah.
don't worry. Like, eventually we'll get all this figured out. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up, and then we can discuss about the Banshee a little bit more. So this last story is not from that website. The website Quora, where people can like ask questions and give responses.
Like Facebook.
Kind of like Facebook or kind of like Reddit. This lady, she came on there, and her name is Hillary, and she shared a story, and I'm going to read about her Banshee encounter. I was awoken by the most god-awful, unearthly screaming in the wee hours. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My dog flattened her ears and started growling. The screaming seemed to be coming from the darkened school athletic field on the other side of the fence. I stepped out on my deck and saw a small, squirming shape in the darkness. So I thought it was raccoons mating. They sometimes scream when they do that. Don't worry, I'm a screamer too. And I yelled, "Hey!" But the screaming continued. My first impulse was to go next door and make sure my neighbor wasn't freaking out by a little voice in my head. But a little voice in my head said not to, so I didn't. And after a few minutes, the screaming stopped. The next morning, I discovered my neighbor dead in her bed. She had died sometime during the night. So yeah, I heard a banshee. Funny though, I wasn't emotionally close with my neighbor, but she considered me to be her best friend. And my Irish mom had set up banshee screams for family members or other loved ones. So it's a little confusing for me to have heard it for someone who is not a loved one to me. So, interesting little last story, kind of a sweet one, to where it's kind of like, she hears the banshee, she's a little freaked, and, finds out her neighbor's dead, but she's like, I wasn't close to my neighbor, but then, it seems like the banshee kind of works, like I said at the beginning, kind of works to where it's like, like for me, my banshee would appear to like you or Steven, to like warn y'all, like if Maddie was already dead, like, it'd appear to you or Steven and kind of like warn you guys that like, hey, Will's dead, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me. I kind of like that last story. It was more descriptive. Can't speak today. But I feel like it was, you're able to follow along and kind of understand what was going on, kind of a modern depiction of what you can encounter today. It might be squirrels, it might be a banshee, you just never know. You just gotta watch out for that neighbor, because when that warning comes, you don't know what's gonna happen next.
Yeah, so again, thank you guys for listening, for tuning in. I promise that if you guys just buckle up, hang on for the ride, these episodes will just continue to get better and better and better, because as you guys are sitting there watching it, like last episode, I didn't know what I knew now, and so like now this episode's going to be a little bit better. We're going to try to, like I said, keep up with the video coming out. If we can, try to get it out on Friday. If it's not out on Friday, don't worry. Like I said, we're on all these different platforms. And make sure you follow us on Instagram. And I think Paul can put that right there. Kinda. Maybe. Anyways, if you follow us, our Twitter is @Beyond Campfire. And if you want to, we also have an Instagram at beyond.th3.campfire. Make sure you follow us there to keep you kind of updated, keep you in the loop, kind of let you know what's going on, like what could we be up to? Who knows? So again, thank you, Paul, for joining me. Hopefully we'll have Steven back next week. If not, you're stuck with me and Paul.
Stay tuned next week to find out who's back. If I were y'all, I'd be looking for Steve. But you'll never know, because the Banshee might scream us out.
Might scream Steven away. Anyways, Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for tuning in. And as always, enjoy.